The gunshot echoed across the plains of southern Colorado as Lillian Jeffords dove beneath the rickety porch of the general store, her heart pounding like a stampede through her chest. At 22, she'd never imagined she'd be running for her life in Manassas, a town that had once promised her sanctuary after fleeing St. Louis in 1878. The spring dust swirled around her skirts as she pressed her body against the weathered boards, praying the approaching footsteps would pass her by. "She can't have gone far," a gruff voice called out. "Find her, or Blackwell will have our hides." Lillian held her breath, clutching the leather pouch containing the damning evidence against Silas Blackwell, the most powerful man in the Colorado Territory. The papers inside would expose his illegal land seizures from honest settlers and the railroad bribes that had built his empire. Papers she'd stumbled upon while working as a maid in his home. When the footsteps faded, she crawled from her hiding place and ran blindly toward the edge of town, where the vast prairie stretched toward the distant mountains. Her lungs burned as she pushed herself forward, her blonde hair coming loose from its pins. Lillian had no destination in mind, only escape. The sound of hoofbeats approaching from behind made her blood run cold. This was it. They'd found her. But when she risked a glance back, she saw not Blackwell's men but a lone rider on a chestnut stallion, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. "Miss," he called out. "You all right?" Lillian stumbled to a stop, her legs nearly giving way beneath her. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. He approached cautiously, hands visible at his sides. "You look like you're in trouble," he said, his voice deep but gentle. In the fading light, she could see he was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and clear blue eyes that studied her with concern. His weathered denim pants and leather vest spoke of a working man, but the gun at his hip suggested he knew how to use it. "I can't stop," Lillian gasped. "They're after me." "Who's after you?" "Blackwell's men. They'll kill me if they find me." The man's expression hardened at the mention of Blackwell's name. "Silas Blackwell," Lillian nodded frantically, glancing back toward town. "I'm Cole Patterson," he said. "And I've got no love for Blackwell or his kind. Come with me. I know a place you can hide." Desperation overrode caution. Lillian allowed him to help her onto his horse, settling behind him as they set off at a gallop across the open country. They rode hard for nearly an hour, the landscape changing from prairie to scattered pine as they climbed into the foothills. Finally, Cole guided his horse down a narrow trail to a small cabin nestled against a rocky outcropping. A thin wisp of smoke curled from the stone chimney. "My line shack," Cole explained as he helped her down. "Not much, but it's safe. Blackwell's men won't find you here." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean, a single room with a bed in one corner, a table and 2 chairs, and a small stove. Cole lit a lamp, illuminating the space with a warm glow. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. "You look ready to collapse." Lillian sank into the offered seat, her legs trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole busied himself starting a fire in the stove. "When you're ready, you can tell me what this is all about." Lillian's hands shook as she loosened the strings of the leather pouch. "Mr. Blackwell, he's not who everyone thinks he is." "Few men are," Cole replied, setting a kettle on to boil. "I worked in his house as a maid. 3 days ago, I was cleaning his study when I found these." She pulled out several folded papers. Land deeds with forged signatures, correspondence about bribing officials, records of threats against families who wouldn't sell. Cole's expression darkened as he looked at the papers. "And you took them?" "I didn't mean to," Lillian said, her voice cracking. I recognized one of the names, the Hendersons. They were found dead last winter. Everyone said it was pneumonia, but these papers suggest otherwise." And Blackwell knows you have these, Lillian nodded. I was careless. One of his men saw me reading them. I ran. Cole poured her a cup of coffee, adding a splash from a flask in his pocket. Drink this. It'll help with the shock. The bitter liquid burned going down, but the warmth spread through her limbs, steadying her nerves. No one will believe my story, she cried softly. Blackwell owns half the territory. The sheriff, the judge, they're all in his pocket. Cole looked at her steadily, his blue eyes meeting hers. I believe every word, he said firmly. I've watched Blackwell destroy lives for years, my own father included. Lillian stared at him. Your father? Thomas Patterson had a good ranch east of Manassas. Blackwell wanted it for the water rights. When Pa wouldn't sell, there was a fire. Pa didn't make it out. Cole's voice was level, but Lillian could hear the pain underneath. That was 5 years ago. I'm sorry, Lillian whispered. Been waiting for a chance to bring Blackwell down ever since, Cole said, studying the papers again. These might be enough, but we need to get them to someone outside Blackwell's influence. Denver, Lillian suggested. Cole shook his head. His reach is long. I'm thinking we need the federal marshal in Santa Fe. He's got no ties to Colorado politics. Santa Fe, that's days away. 4 or 5 riding hard. Cole looked at her appraisingly. Can you ride? I grew up on a farm in Missouri before my parents died, Lillian said. I can ride. Cole nodded. We'll leave at first light. Get some rest. You take the bed, I'll sleep by the fire. Lillian wanted to protest, but exhaustion swept over her like a wave. She barely remembered Cole helping her to the bed before sleep claimed her. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Dawn light filtered through the cabin's single window as Cole moved quietly around the stove. He changed into a clean shirt, and his dark hair was damp from washing. Morning, he said, noticing her watching him. Hope you're hungry. Lillian sat up, embarrassed to have slept in her clothes, her hair a tangled mess. Thank you for all this, she said. For believing me. Cole set a plate of food before her. Eat. We've got a long day ahead. As they ate, Cole outlined his plan. They would ride west, avoiding the main trails, then south toward New Mexico territory. Blackwell will have men watching the roads, but they won't expect us to go cross-country. After breakfast, Cole gave her a spare shirt and a weathered leather jacket. It gets cold in the mountains, he explained. While she changed behind a blanket hung for privacy, he packed provisions and ammunition. Outside, Cole had saddled a second horse, a sturdy gray mare. This is Smoke, he said, patting the horse's neck. She's gentle but sure-footed. She'll carry you well. They set out as the morning sun crested the mountains, riding west through pine forest and rocky terrain. Cole led the way, frequently checking their back trail for pursuers. By midday, they'd covered considerable ground, stopping only briefly to rest the horses by a clear mountain stream. You ride well, Cole observed as Lillian dismounted gracefully. My father believed girls should know the same skills as boys, she replied, stretching her legs. Much to my mother's dismay, smart man your father, he was. Lillian's expression softened with memory. They both died of influenza when I was 17. I came west hoping for a new start. And ended up working for Blackwell, she nodded. The housekeeper hired me. I rarely saw him until recently. Cole's eyes narrowed. Did he bother you? Lillian hesitated. He started taking notice of me a few weeks ago. Nothing improper, but the way he looked at me. She shuddered. I was planning to leave anyway, find work elsewhere. Then I found those papers. They continued on through the afternoon, the landscape growing more rugged. Cole proved to be a skilled guide, finding game trails and passages through seemingly impassable terrain. By evening, they'd reached a small plateau overlooking a valley. We'll camp here, Cole decided, helping Lillian dismount. Good visibility, and there's water nearby. As Cole built a small, smokeless fire, Lillian found herself studying him. There was something reassuring about his presence, a quiet competence in his movements, a steadiness in his gaze. Despite having just met him, she felt safer than she had in months. "How do you know this country so well?" she asked as they ate a simple meal of jerky and hardtack. "Been working these mountains since I was 15, Cole replied. "After my father died, I tried running the ranch, but Blackwell made sure no one would sell me cattle or lend me money. Eventually lost the land to back taxes." "That's terrible," Lillian said softly. Cole shrugged. "Made my way as a scout, tracker, sometimes a cowhand. The mountains taught me more than any man could." As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Lillian huddled closer to the fire, pulling Cole's jacket tighter around her shoulders. "Here," Cole said, unrolling a heavy wool blanket. "Wrap up in this." "What about you?" "I'm used to the cold," he said, but Lillian noticed him suppressing a shiver. "We could share," she suggested, then blushed at her boldness. Cole hesitated, then nodded. They sat side by side, the blanket around both their shoulders, watching the stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. "Tell me about yourself," Cole said after a comfortable silence. "Beyond what's brought you here," Lillian considered the question. "I like to read, poetry mostly. I used to dream of being a teacher, but life had other plans." "It's not too late for that dream," Cole said. "Perhaps. If we survive this journey." She glanced at him. "And you? What dreams did you have before Blackwell took your ranch?" A small smile played at the corners of Cole's mouth. "Thought I'd raise horses. Good horses, not just work animals, maybe find a wife, have a family." He poked at the fire with a stick. "Simple dreams." "The best kind," Lillian said softly. They fell silent again, but it was a companionable quiet. When Lillian's eyes grew heavy, Cole insisted she take his bedroll while he kept watch. "I'll wake you for the second shift," he promised. But when Lillian opened her eyes next, dawn was breaking over the mountains. "You let me sleep," she accused, finding him already brewing coffee. "You needed it more than I did," he replied simply. They broke camp quickly and continued their journey, climbing higher into the mountains. The trail grew steeper, forcing them to dismount and lead the horses through the most treacherous passages. By midday, they'd crested a ridge that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding countryside. Cole suddenly raised his hand, signaling Lillian to stop. He pointed to the valley below where a group of riders followed a trail. "Blackwell's men," Lillian whispered, fear clutching at her heart. Cole nodded grimly. "4 of them. They're following our trail from yesterday." "How did they find us so quickly?" "Blackwell probably has men searching every direction." Cole studied the riders through narrowed eyes. "I recognize the one in front, Mason. He's Blackwell's best tracker." "What do we do?" Cole considered their options. "We need to throw them off our trail. There's an old mining camp about 3 miles west. We'll head there, then double back south." They pushed on at a faster pace, Cole frequently checking behind them. The abandoned mining camp appeared as the sun began its westward descent, a cluster of decaying wooden structures clinging to the mountainside. "This was the Silver Dream Mine," Cole explained as they rode between the sagging buildings. "Played out 10 years ago." They dismounted at what had once been the mine office. Cole led Lillian inside the dilapidated structure, where mining equipment lay scattered among fallen timbers. "We need to make it look like we're staying here," Cole said, gathering wood for a fire in the old stove. "Then we'll slip out after dark and circle back." While Cole prepared a visible fire, Lillian explored the abandoned office. In a dusty corner, she found an old ledger. Flipping through the yellowed pages, a name caught her eye. "Cole," she called. "Look at this." He joined her, leaning close to see where she pointed. The ledger showed a transfer of ownership for the Silver Dream mine from its original prospectors to a company called Centennial Enterprises. "That's one of Blackwell's holding companies," Cole said, recognizing the name from Lillian's stolen documents. "So he owned this mine too." "The date," Lillian pointed out. "This transfer happened a month before the mine supposedly played out." Cole's expression darkened. "He forced them out, just like he did to my father and the others." A sudden sound outside made them both freeze, the unmistakable crunch of boots on gravel. Cole motioned for Lillian to stay still as he drew his revolver and moved silently to the window. "4 riders," he whispered. "They found us faster than I expected." Lillian's heart hammered in her chest. "What now?" Cole glanced around the office, mind working quickly. "There's a shaft entrance at the back of the camp. If we can reach it without being seen, we might be able to hide inside until they leave." "Inside the mine?" Lillian couldn't keep the fear from her voice. "Just the entrance," Cole assured her. "We won't go deep." They gathered their essential supplies, leaving items behind to maintain the illusion they planned to stay. Cole led her out through a broken back window, and they crept from shadow to shadow across the camp. They had almost reached the mine entrance when a shout went up. "There they are!" A gunshot cracked, splintering wood near Lillian's head. Cole pulled her behind an ore cart, returning fire as they backed toward the dark mine opening. "Get inside," he commanded, firing again to cover their retreat. The mine entrance was a black void framed by weathered timbers. Lillian hesitated at the threshold, but another bullet ricocheting nearby decided for her. She plunged into the darkness, Cole right behind her. The air inside was cold and damp, heavy with the smell of earth and minerals. Cole struck a match, illuminating a tunnel that extended into the mountain's heart. Support beams lined the walls, many sagging under the weight of time. "Stay close," he whispered, lighting a small lantern he'd brought from his saddlebag. "And quiet." They moved deeper into the mine, the sounds of their pursuers growing fainter. The tunnel branched, and Cole chose the path that descended deeper into the mountain. After several minutes, they reached a chamber where multiple tunnels converged. "We'll wait here," Cole decided. "They won't come in far without light." As if in answer, distant voices echoed down the tunnel behind them. "They're inside," Lillian gasped. Cole extinguished their lantern. "This way," he whispered, taking her hand in the darkness. They felt their way along a side tunnel, moving as quietly as possible. Behind them, the bobbing glow of lanterns appeared in the main chamber. "Check all the tunnels," a voice commanded. "They're in here somewhere." Cole pulled Lillian into a narrow crevice barely wide enough for them to stand pressed against each other. They held perfectly still as footsteps approached, a lantern beam sweeping past their hiding place. Lillian buried her face against Cole's chest, trying to control her breathing. She could feel his heartbeat, steady despite the danger. The searcher moved on, but they remained hidden, listening as the men called to each other from different tunnels. Time stretched endlessly in the darkness. Finally, the voices seemed to recede. "I think they're leaving," Cole whispered against Lillian's hair. "Or setting a trap," she murmured back. They waited longer until the mine fell completely silent. Cole cautiously relit their lantern, its small flame casting long shadows on the rock walls. "We need to find another way out," he said. "They'll be watching the main entrance." "Is there another way?" Cole nodded. "Most mines have at least 2 shafts for ventilation. We just need to find it." They explored the tunnels cautiously, Cole studying the air flow and rock formations. In one passage, they found abandoned mining tools and a half-filled ore cart. In another, a collapsed section blocked their path entirely. "The air feels fresher this way," Cole said eventually, leading them down a sloping tunnel. The passage narrowed, then widened into another chamber. Overhead, a shaft of daylight pierced the darkness. An air shaft, Cole confirmed, examining the vertical tunnel. Iron rungs embedded in the rock wall formed a ladder leading upward. "This will take us to the surface." "How far up is it?" Lillian asked, peering into the shaft. 50 feet, maybe more, Cole estimated. "Can you climb it?" Lillian nodded, though her stomach tightened at the thought. "I'll manage." Cole insisted on going first to test the rusty rungs. "Follow exactly where I step," he instructed. "Some of these might be weak." The climb was grueling. Several times, a rung broke under Cole's weight, sending rusty metal and rock fragments showering down. Lillian's arms burned with the effort, but she forced herself upward, focusing on Cole's boots above her rather than the drop below. When they finally emerged onto the mountainside, the sun was setting, painting the western sky in brilliant orange and purple. They found themselves on a narrow ledge overlooking the valley, the mining camp visible some distance away. "We made it," Lillian breathed, collapsing onto a rock to rest her trembling legs. "We're not safe yet," Cole cautioned, scanning the area, "but we've bought some time. Blackwell's men will be searching the mine for a while." "Our horses. We'll have to do without them," Cole said grimly. "We can make our way down to the valley on foot, then look for replacements." They waited until full darkness before beginning their descent. The mountainside was treacherous in the night, but the moon provided enough light to pick their way down. By midnight, they'd reached the valley floor, miles from the mining camp. "There's a homestead about 2 hours' walk from here," Cole said. "Belongs to a man named Wilkins. He's no friend of Blackwell's." They trudged through the night, exhaustion dragging at their steps. Lillian felt as though she'd been running forever, the peaceful life she'd once known an increasingly distant memory. She stumbled over a rock, and Cole's arm immediately went around her waist, steadying her. "We're almost there," he encouraged. "Just a little further." In the pre-dawn light, a small cabin appeared ahead, smoke rising from its chimney. Cole approached cautiously, keeping Lillian behind him as he called out, "Wilkins." "It's Cole Patterson." The cabin door opened, revealing a grizzled man with a shotgun. He lowered it upon recognizing Cole. "Patterson, what the devil brings you here at this hour?" "Trouble," Cole replied simply. "We need help." Wilkins ushered them inside, where a fire burned in the hearth and coffee bubbled on the stove. His wife, a kind-faced woman with gray-streaked hair, immediately set about preparing food while Cole explained their situation, leaving out the details of the documents Lillian carried. "Blackwell's reach gets longer every year," Wilkins growled. "Tried to buy my place last spring. When I refused, my water supply mysteriously dried up." "How'd you manage?" Cole asked. "Dug a new well, deeper than before," Wilkins said with grim satisfaction. "Found better water too, but that's Blackwell for you. Takes what he wants and doesn't care who suffers. Mrs. Wilkins set plates of eggs and biscuits before them. "Eat now, talk later," she insisted. "You both look half-starved." After the meal, Wilkins offered them his spare horses. "They're not much to look at, but they're strong. Take them to Santa Fe if that's where you're headed." "We can't repay you right away," Cole began, but Wilkins waved him off. "Anything that causes Blackwell grief is payment enough," the older man said. "Besides, your father once helped me when no one else would. I haven't forgotten." They set out mid-morning, freshly provisioned and mounted on Wilkins' horses, a bay gelding for Cole and a dun mare for Lillian. Their new route would take them southwest, across the foothills, and into New Mexico territory. As they rode side by side, Lillian found herself studying Cole's profile against the blue sky. In just 2 days, this man had risked everything to help her, a stranger with a dangerous secret. She wondered what drove him besides revenge against Blackwell. Why are you really doing this?" she asked suddenly. Cole looked at her, surprised by the question. "What do you mean, helping me, risking your life? Is it just about Blackwell?" He was quiet for a long moment, guiding his horse around a fallen tree before answering. "At first, maybe, but now." He met her eyes. "I believe in what's right, Lillian, and helping you is right." His simple declaration warmed her more than she expected. They rode on in comfortable silence, covering miles of rugged country. By late afternoon, they'd crossed into New Mexico territory, though the landscape showed little change. They made camp that night in a protected hollow, with a small fire that gave more comfort than heat. As they shared the food Mrs. Wilkins had packed, Lillian found herself telling Cole about her life before Manasseh, her childhood in Missouri, her parents, her dreams of teaching. "What about you?" she asked. "You mentioned raising horses. Is that still what you want?" Cole poked at the fire with a stick, sparks rising into the night sky. "Been so focused on surviving, I haven't thought much beyond that." He glanced at her. "But yes, I still think about it sometimes. Good land, good horses. A place of my own." "It sounds wonderful," Lillian said softly. "It does, doesn't it?" His smile reached his eyes, softening the weathered lines of his face. "What will you do? After Santa Fe, I mean." Lillian hadn't thought that far ahead. "I don't know, find work somewhere, I suppose." "Somewhere Blackwell can't reach." "You could still be a teacher," Cole suggested. "Towns are always looking for educated women to teach their children." The idea rekindled something in Lillian's heart, a dream she'd set aside out of necessity. "Perhaps I could." They sat in silence, watching the flames dance. When Lillian shivered, Cole moved to sit beside her, sharing his blanket as they had the night before. This time, it felt more natural when she leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his warmth. "We should reach Santa Fe in 3 days if we keep this pace," Cole said, his voice low in the darkness. "And then what happens?" Lillian asked, suddenly fearful of what would come after their journey ended. Cole seemed to understand her unspoken question. "I won't leave you alone to face this," he promised. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." His words eased something in Lillian's chest, a tightness she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. She fell asleep that night with her head on Cole's shoulder, feeling safer than she had in months. The next 2 days followed a similar pattern, riding hard during daylight, making cold camps at night to avoid detection. They encountered no further sign of Blackwell's men, but Cole remained vigilant, often doubling back or taking unexpected routes to confuse any potential pursuers. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, they crested a hill to see Santa Fe spread before them in the distance, a sprawling collection of adobe buildings nestled in the high desert landscape. "We made it," Lillian breathed, relief washing over her. Cole nodded, but his expression remained cautious. "We're not safe yet. Blackwell might have telegraphed ahead." They approached the town as evening fell, the setting sun painting the adobe walls in shades of gold and orange. Cole led them to a small inn on the outskirts, away from the busier central streets. "Wait here," he told Lillian, helping her dismount in the inn's stable yard. "I'll make sure it's safe." He returned minutes later with news that the federal marshal's office was closed until morning. "We've got a room for the night," he said. "The innkeeper's wife is preparing a bath and meal for you." The promised bath was heavenly after days on the trail. Lillian scrubbed away the dust and fatigue, letting the hot water soothe her aching muscles. The innkeeper's wife had provided a simple dress to replace her trail-worn clothes, nothing fancy, but clean and relatively well-fitting. When she entered the small private dining room where Cole waited, she saw his eyes widen slightly. "You look," he began, then seemed to lose his words. "Cleaner, at least," Lillian finished with a smile, smoothing the unfamiliar dress. "Beautiful," Cole said quietly, rising to pull out her chair. They ate a hearty meal of stew and fresh bread, speaking little but exchanging glances that said more than words. The peril of their journey had forged something between them, a bond deeper than mere companionship. After dinner, Cole escorted her upstairs to their room. He'd secured the only available accommodation, a small chamber with a single bed. Seeing her hesitation at the threshold, Cole immediately offered to sleep on the floor. "No," Lillian said, surprising herself with her boldness. "You've done enough uncomfortable sleeping these past days. The bed is large enough to share." They prepared for sleep with awkward courtesy, turning away from each other as they shed outer layers of clothing. When they finally lay side by side in the narrow bed, Lillian was acutely aware of Cole's presence, the sound of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his body. "Tomorrow we'll take the documents to the marshal," Cole whispered in the darkness. "Then this will all be over." "What happens after?" Lillian asked, voicing the question that had been growing in her mind. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then his hand found hers beneath the blanket, his fingers intertwining with hers. "That depends," he said softly, "on what you want to happen." Lillian turned to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the dim light. "I want," she began, then gathered her courage. "I want not to be alone anymore." Cole's free hand gently touched her cheek. "You won't be," he promised. "Not if you'll have me beside you." Their lips met in the darkness, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. Lillian had been kissed before, but never like this, never with such tenderness and promise. When they finally broke apart, she rested her head on Cole's chest, listening to his heartbeat as she drifted into the most peaceful sleep she'd had in weeks. Morning brought renewed purpose. They dressed quickly, Cole buckling on his gun belt as a precaution. The leather pouch containing Blackwell's incriminating documents remained secured inside Lillian's bodice, close to her heart. The federal marshal's office was a sturdy stone building near the center of town. As they approached, Cole scanned the street for any sign of danger. The morning bustle of Santa Fe swirled around them, merchants opening shops, women carrying baskets, children playing in the dusty street. Inside the marshal's office, a stern-faced man with iron-gray hair and a star pinned to his vest looked up from his desk. "Can I help you folks, Marshal Davis?" Cole asked, recognizing the name from Wilkins' description. "That's me, and you are Cole Patterson. This is Miss Lillian Jeffords. We've come from Manassas, Colorado territory with evidence of serious crimes." The marshal's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened with interest. "What kind of crimes?" Lillian stepped forward, removing the leather pouch from her bodice. "Land fraud, bribery of officials, and—" She hesitated. "We believe murder." Marshal Davis gestured for them to sit, then carefully examined each document Lillian had stolen. His face grew increasingly grim as he read. "Silas Blackwell," he muttered. "I've heard that name before, not favorably." "He controls most of southern Colorado," Cole explained. "These documents prove he's been forging land deeds and bribing officials to seize property." "And the murder claim," Lillian pointed to specific correspondence. "This letter mentions taking care of the Henderson family if they refuse to sell their ranch. They were found dead 3 months later." Marshal Davis leaned back in his chair, stroking his mustache thoughtfully. "This is federal jurisdiction, land fraud across territorial lines, corruption of government officials. I can issue warrants based on these documents." Relief flooded through Lillian, but Cole remained tense. "Blackwell won't go down easily," he warned. "He has men everywhere, including here." The marshal asked sharply. "We don't know," Cole admitted, "but I'd advise caution." Marshal Davis nodded gravely. I appreciate the warning. I'll telegraph the federal courthouse in Denver immediately. In the meantime, you two should stay somewhere safe." He opened a drawer, removing a small purse of coins. "Government funds for material witnesses. Get a room at the Santa Fe Hotel. It's the big adobe building 3 blocks west. I'll post a deputy outside." As they left the marshal's office, Lillian felt lightheaded with relief. "He believed us," she breathed. "It's really happening." Cole took her hand, squeezing it gently. "It is, but the marshal's right. We need to stay cautious until Blackwell is in custody." They secured a room at the hotel as instructed, a comfortable space with 2 beds and a view of the plaza. A stern-faced deputy took up position in the hallway outside their door, nodding respectfully as they passed. That evening, Marshal Davis visited them with news. "Telegrams have been sent to Denver and Washington. Federal agents will arrest Blackwell within days." He looked at Lillian with approval. "You've done a brave thing, Miss Jeffords. Many people will get justice because of your courage." After the marshal left, Lillian stood by the window, watching the sunset paint the adobe buildings in warm gold. Cole came to stand beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his presence. "It's strange," she murmured. "A week ago I was just a maid, frightened and alone, and now—" "And now," Cole prompted when she fell silent. Lillian turned to face him. "Now I feel like I have a future again, because of you." Cole's eyes softened. "You gave yourself that future, Lillian. Your courage did that." "No," she insisted. "When I said no one would believe my story, you did. You believed every word." "Because it was the truth," he said simply. "And because I saw something in you from the first moment, a strength you maybe didn't know you had." Lillian moved closer, placing her hand on his chest. "What happens now, Cole? After this is over," he covered her hand with his own. "That depends on what you want." "I want." Lillian took a deep breath, gathering her courage once more. "I want to be with you, wherever that leads us." Cole's smile transformed his face, erasing the lines of worry and vigilance. "I've been thinking about that land near the San Luis Valley," he said softly. "Good grazing, plenty of water. Perfect for horses." His eyes held a question. "Perfect for a home, too." "And a school, perhaps," Lillian suggested, her heart quickening. "The valley must have children who need teaching." "It does," Cole agreed, drawing her closer. "Is that what you want? A home, a school, a life together?" Instead of answering with words, Lillian rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. This kiss was different from their first, not a beginning but a promise. 3 days later, a telegram arrived from Denver. Blackwell had been arrested along with several of his associates. The evidence Lillian provided had opened a floodgate of testimonies from others who had suffered under his corrupt rule. The federal prosecutor was confident of convictions on all charges. With the immediate danger past, Cole and Lillian prepared to leave Santa Fe. Marshal Davis presented them with a letter of commendation from the territorial governor, and more practically, a reward for their assistance in bringing down Blackwell's criminal enterprise. "Enough to buy that land you were talking about," the marshal noted with a knowing smile. "And get those horses started." They married in Santa Fe's small church the day before departing, with Marshal Davis standing as witness. Lillian wore a simple blue dress purchased with part of the reward money, and Cole a new suit that made him look both uncomfortable and handsome. The journey back to Colorado was leisurely compared to their flight south. They took the main roads this time, stopping in towns along the way, no longer fugitives but husband and wife beginning a new life together. 6 months later, the Patterson Ranch was taking shape in the San Luis Valley, a sturdy house, a small stable with 4 quality horses, and the beginnings of what would become one of the finest breeding operations in Colorado territory. And in the front room of their home, Lillian had set up a classroom where she taught the children from neighboring homesteads. On a crisp autumn evening, Cole found Lillian sitting on their porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "Any regrets?" he asked, a question he still posed occasionally, as if hardly believing their good fortune. Lillian smiled, placing his hand on her slightly rounded belly. "Only that we didn't meet sooner." Cole's eyes widened as he understood the meaning of her gesture. "Truly." "Truly," she confirmed. "Come spring, there'll be one more Patterson in this valley." As Cole gathered her in his arms, Lillian reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a frightened maid running for her life to a woman with a home, a purpose, and a love she had never dared to imagine. "When I said no one would believe my story," she whispered, "you told me you believed every word." "And I still do," Cole murmured against her hair. "Every word, every day, for all our days to come." In the years that followed, their family grew a son named Thomas after Cole's father, then twin daughters, Emma and Rose, who inherited their mother's golden hair and their father's blue eyes. The Patterson Horse Ranch prospered, becoming known throughout the territory for its fine stock. Lillian's school expanded to a proper building where she taught generations of valley children. Silas Blackwell died in a federal prison, his empire dismantled, his stolen lands returned to their rightful owners. The Henderson family's ranch was given to their surviving daughter, who became one of Lillian's dearest friends and strongest supporters when she later campaigned for women's suffrage in Colorado. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Lillian with a journey back to Santa Fe, retracing the path that had brought them together. They visited the federal marshal's office, now occupied by a much younger man who nevertheless knew their story. It had become something of a legend in law enforcement circles. "My father always said it was the bravest thing he ever saw," the young marshal told them. "A maid and a cowboy bringing down the most powerful man in the territory." "She was the brave one," Cole insisted, squeezing Lillian's hand. "I just believed her story." That night, in the same hotel where they had once hidden as fugitives, Cole presented Lillian with a small leather-bound book. Inside, he had painstakingly written their story, from her desperate flight from Manassas to the building of their ranch and family. "So our grandchildren will know," he explained, "how their grandmother changed the course of history because she had the courage to stand up for what was right." Lillian traced the words on the first page, tears blurring her vision. "No one will believe my story," she cried. The cowboy said, "I believe every word." "It was always you," she whispered to Cole. "From that first moment when you found me running across the prairie, it was always meant to be you." "And it always will be," he promised, drawing her into his arms as the New Mexico sunset painted the world in gold, just as it had 20 years before when their journey together was only beginning.